Where are we going now?
Okay, we are on page 5B1, He Amud Bet. And we are in the conversation regarding the halacha, which is relevant to all Kohanim. You're missing your kippah, you forgot the kippah.
Sorry.
Right?
Those white ones.
It's okay. Close. Here we go. Okay. So what do we got? We got the sugya described the idea of mitzaynim ala kevarot, which means that you have to mark all the kevarot, right? You have to make sure that everybody's aware where there's a place where something is not holy, because they were kohanim, they were people who were eating korbanot in Yerushalayim. So because we had this issue, so we would mark exactly where the kever would be. Says the Gemara. Tanu Rabbanan, Al Chachamim explained, En mitzayinin lo al kezait min hamet. We don't make a marking, not for a kezait min hamet. Now that's a very strange language. Kezait min hamet. Kezait normally means, a kezait of bread. What does kezait of a dead guy mean? Kezait just means the size of an olive, so it's a measurement. So the Braita says that if the amount of the corpse that's buried there is the size of an olive, small amount of a dead person, but you can imagine such a thing would be very relevant. Now we have grenades, people, God forbid, there's body pieces, So the halakha would be that you don't have to mark a piece of kezait, a piece of a met less than a kezait.
How would they have
what?
That situation even?
So we just said, as an example, if something blows up. Battlefield. People are slicing with their swords. There's a piece of the guy is this big. What's the halakha? Do you have to mark it or not? We'll see exactly what the deciding factor is for when yes, when not. And not on a bone which is the size of a seorah, of a grain of barley, very, very small. So if it's that small, so kezait min hamet means of the corpse. Etzem, the bone, is a much smaller amount that we're saying that you don't have to mark for. Obviously, we're also indicating by inference that if it's more than a kezait, or if it's more than a seorah, then you have to. And not on anything which is not mitameh be'ohel, in a tent. So now let's just try to explain what does that mean. There's different kinds of tum'ah, and there's different types of transmission. One type of tum'ah is when you touch the object. Touch the tameh, you become tameh. Another type of tum'ah is when you carry the tum'ah. Another type of tum'ah is when you take a stick and you push the object, you move it through your power. So you're interacting with this thing which is tameh. So there's different kinds of tum'ah. But the predominant one that we're worried about is the tum'ah of oil, which means where there's something covering the met. Now, that's something covering, it could be in a room, so the roof is covering. So me and this dead body in the same room.
Even though you're away, but in the room.
Even though you're away, so it could be a long room.
Connection.
The roof connects you, exactly. So we're sharing the same roof. But also, there's two other versions of roof which don't actually require a regular roof. That's when you're the roof.
Tree or this? Oh.
For the tree. Tree is similar to the room.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, tree is similar to the roof of a house. So the bottom of the tree, the canopy of the tree, is like the roof of a room. Okay? So the body and you are under the same roof. Okay? There's another kind of roof when you're the roof. So the body is buried. Now I came over. I'm the roof over the dead body. That's also tumat oil. When you are a oil, a tent over, a covering over the dead body. The flip side is when the dead body is over you, where the dead body is a roof for you. So in any type of scenario where there's coverage, okay?
Well, that's
so
being outside and you put your hand over the body, then you're tameh even without touching the body?
So if you just put it over as an example, but there's nothing over that, okay? So then you would think, there's no roof, what's the problem? You're the roof.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. So
You've covered over.
But doesn't the proximity...
Yes, even outside.
Doesn't the proximity automatically make you tameh?
No.
Because you didn't touch it.
Let's say I'm 2 feet. Let's say we're not getting into the laws of Tumat so much, but in terms of Tumat oil, it's over there. I'm good. No problem.
Oh, oil.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
It's a little different.
So, says the Gemara, what are we really worried about? Well, we're worried about something which could be mitameh with oil. Okay? Now, let me explain why. We'll see. The Mishnah is going to explain why. Aval mitzanin ala shidra v'ala gulgolet. But what do you have to put a marker for? For a gulgolet, for a skull, or shidra, which means the spine. Simply understood, the Mishnah is talking, the Braita is talking about the whole spine. So all of the vertebrae.
It's bigger than a bar.
Excellent question. Okay. However, so shidra or gulgolet are mitameh bitumat oil, and therefore we have to mark it. Al rov binyan ve'al rov minyan hamet. If you have more than rov minyan means more than half of the number. Rov binyan means more than half of the structure. So, as an example, if you're taking the person's like legs and his hip and his thigh bone, that's already most of the person's bones in his body in terms of structural. Okay, that's what gives the guy his height. So that would be considered enough to have rov minyan, binyan. What does rov minyan mean? Let's say I don't have the majority in terms of structural, but I have the majority in terms of numbers. So in other words, how many bones we have in a human body? We always say 248. What's half of 248? 124. What's the majority of 248? 125. So rov binyan, that's got to qualifies. You got to put a marker over that space. Okay. Now the end of the Braita really helps us understand and look backwards. Then mitzaynin ala vadaut. Let's say you have a graveyard. Okay. In every grave, there's bones. Do I have to mark on every grave? No. You know why? Because anyone who's a kohen, anyone who's got tahor food, korban food, he knows he can't bring it to a graveyard. So anything which is obvious doesn't need a marker because the guy you're not protecting anybody. So what do we mark? We mark sifekot, cases which are cases of doubt. And then the Gemara in a minute is going to say exactly what are the cases of sifekot. So let's just revisit. How does a person become tameh in interaction with a dead body?
I mean, roof covering.
Roof covering is one style. Okay. Other side is I touch it, I move it, I push it. Okay. Moving and pushing are not relevant when something's buried.
Yeah.
Can't touch it, can't move it. So what's the only thing we're worried about?
In between.
Only the oil. So therefore, says the Braita, anything which is not mitameh tumat oil, because in the Torah it said certain things are, certain things aren't. I'll give you an example. Nevela, a dead body, or one of the shiratzim, which is mitameh, is only ever mitameh bitumat maga or masa. Carrying it, pushing it, moving it, right? Touching it. But it's not tameh with oil. So certain tumas are higher level. They make you tameh in a wider range of scenarios, including oil, some not. So any case where something's buried in the backyard, right, of a sheretz, I have nothing to worry about. So we're only mitzayen for human bones, and only on the ones that would make you tameh with oil, because those are the only ones that you could ever by mistake wind up wandering over or under the same roof as. Gemara says, "Ve'elu sifekot."
Where the mark would be relevant.
Where the marker would be relevant, we would help you.
That's the key.
Okay. If it's obvious, I don't need it. If you can't touch it, so I don't need to be worried about it. The only thing I'm worried about is when it's covered. So if that's not mitameh b'tumat oil, I don't need to mark it.
Right.
Okay.
So it's the marking.
So it's obvious. So, from the end of the Braita, you understand backwards what the Braita is telling you. This is a very pragmatic marking. It's only when it's going to save somebody from something that otherwise they would not already have been saved from. Says the Gemara, says the Braita, so what are these sifekot? What are these cases? Says the Gemara, sichachot, ufiraot, be'etapras. Anytime where you have something which is coming over, like from the word sechach, something which is covering over, and it's not something you automatically would have even noticed. Let's say, as an example, you're walking past in the park, you don't realize that this grave, 100 feet up, has branches over it. We're going to mark that, because you might not have caught it, okay?
Pretty logical.
Very logical, okay? Upiraot means something which is sticking out. So
Marking the grave, you're marking the
Marking-
you're marking the grave.
not the branches.
No, no.
You wouldn't even see it.
Because you wouldn't see
That's
the
why you
Same,
need
yeah.
marking.
That's why you need the
You
marking.
could get faked out. You know
It's like look up type of item. Okay? Upiraot means something which sticks out over. So a lot of times you have a building, let's say, and out of the edge of the building you have a canopy or even something decorative, like you have on the eagles. What is it on the Chrysler building? Which was one that has the eagles coming out of the side, or gargoyles?
Yeah.
Right? You have all these different things sticking out of the building. So you think, oh, I'm out of the building. So it's not a problem. There's only sky.
Terrace above.
But there's a terrace, anything like that, sticking out. Ubet hapras, says the Gemara, and as well, in a case where you have a field, and in this field, this bet hapras, there was a grave. But someone decided that they wanted to use it for something else, so they plowed over the field. Now nobody knows that this is a graveyard to protect themselves. Okay? Now, unfortunately, all throughout history, we've had this example of Bet HaPras. All throughout history. You're having it now all over Eastern Europe. The cities are deciding, all these Jews, they're gone. So they have this cemetery, well, I could sell it for real estate. Because people were buried there 200 years ago. Who's going to stop me if I unearth their great-great-great-grandfather? They're not even here. They don't live here. Of course, they don't know. Jewish people are visiting and saying Kaddish and coming back to pray, and that's there's
Some are indirectly also get destroyed, not even with intention. Like during battles, they go through fields. They go They go through areas, towns. They massacre. They wipe out these things indiscriminately, and you have.
So, as an example, in Halab, that's an example.
Right, yeah.
No, they're not trying. They don't mind.
No.
They're not trying to blow up the cemetery. They're just blowing up everything. In a scenario where something was plowed over, the idea is very pragmatic. It's not why it was done. It's the fact that it's not noticeable. Right. So if it was plowed over, it was bombed to smithereens, they built a highway, whatever they did. In any of these cases, you have a problem.
If it's excavated X amount of feet, does it still have a problem?
What do you
They
mean?
dig down 100 feet in the cemetery, there's no bones anymore, things like that.
What do you mean? And they move the bones?
Yeah.
So sometimes they do that. If they move the bones and there's no bones anymore, no problem.
Then you could use the place.
Yeah. By the way, what if they move the bones like as a sin? Still no problem. That's their sin that they moved the bodies. But now I'm a Kohen. Am I not allowed to walk here because there used to be a cemetery? No such
Then
halacha.
it's go.
Okay. Fine. Says the Gemara. So, the en mitzaynin, and this is very interesting, en ma'amidin tziyun bimkom tum'ah. Shlo lefsid ta'arot. Imagine you put the sign right over the grave. Okay? By the time the guy comes to read what the sign says, already over the grave. Yeah, he's a roofie. Had that. Right? The guy, yeah, exactly. He didn't bring his glasses. He's a Kohen. He's looking like this. By the time he saw it, he's tameh. So what do we do instead? What do? We move the markers a little bit of a distance away so that you didn't come into contact with it by the time you're reading the sign. Nor, the opposite, do we go too far away with what's it called? Israel, because we don't want to waste Israel. I always love this Gemara. Look, here's the grave. Okay? I'm going to show you guys also. Here's the grave. You put it over here. The guy, by the time he sees it, he's already tameh. Okay? You put it over here on the outskirts of the grave, you're perfect. Imagine you think, I don't want anyone even getting close. What happens if they're playing good football catch? Let me go here. Here, I'm going to go here. But now all this area, no one walks. Why? Because Kohanim, or people that are eating kodashim, they're eating korbanot, that they think that it's asur. Oh. So you took a 10-foot piece of Eretz Israel and you rendered it useless. You're wasting a piece of Israel. Isn't that beautiful? See how sensitive.
Out of just thinking the way it's used.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Says the Gemara. Israel. Okay. Now the Gemara's question is on the original part of the Braita. Ukazait min amet eno mitameh ba'oel. Who told you that less than a kazait, actually, a kezait from a corpse is not mitameh ba'oil. V'atanan, doesn't the Mishnah say, elu shemitamim ba'oil? These are the ones that are mitameh ba'oil with a roof of any kind, any of the three kinds. Kezait min amet. So the Mishnah over there says, what is in kezait? Meaning that from the size of an olive, you're already part of the tum'ah of ohel.
This is a separate.
So we have a separate Mishnah that explicitly says that when you have an olive size of a corpse,
And that would cover all those other things, the bones with the things, the majority of the bones.
so first of all, met, the difference between corpse and etzem is the bones. The corpse that we're talking about is the actual body, the skin.
That's only a very short period. Okay.
Yeah, short period, but long enough to make tameh. Okay? Says the Gemara.
New burial.
So you see clearly, kezait min orf is a tzaddik. They say the bodies of tzaddikim don't rot. Yeah. Okay. Says the Gemara. Amar Rav Papa answers, Hacha bekezait mitzumtzam askinan. Mitzumtzam means precise. Like the tiny, mitzumtzam means like to shrink something. So as an example, if someone tells you to take a teaspoon versus a heaping teaspoon. Heaping is teaspoon plus yani. Mitzumtzam means exactly 1 teaspoon, not 1 sugar grain more. So over here, because we're talking about something which is almost exactly that amount, of a kazait. The sof, exactly what you said. What's going to happen? It's going to be buried in the ground, right? Or even if it's going to just sit there, what's going to happen? It's going to shrink, even without decomposing. Just by nature, you take a piece of skin or of meat or whatever, it starts to shrink as it loses moisture, loses volume. So if you took a piece which is exactly kazait, so what's going to happen to it? Michsar chaser. In the end, it's gonna, what's it called? It's gonna shrink. So if I put a marker, so it's good for this minute, because right now, in this precise minute, the kazait qualifies. But in 20 minutes from now, no, it's not gonna be good. Okay? So, and then what's gonna happen? Just I want to point out, and then what's gonna happen?
You don't need it anymore. It's like a wasteful one.
Sorry?
You wasted the ground.
2 problems. One problem is what we said early. It's a waste of the ground. Second problem, what happens if by mistake someone goes into the place that was marked and he didn't realize? Had that was taking a phone call, didn't realize. He's got the korban with him, the shwama from the korban.
Throws it away.
What does he do? He doesn't throw it away, he burns it.
And then he burns
it. Now you burnt kodashim that was tahor. Because you saw a marker, you assumed, I made it tameh. Meanwhile, it was only tameh at that time because it was exactly an olive. Mm-hmm. So if I mark an exact amount of an olive,
Somebody to do a false.
you're gonna have someone burn kodashim. So therefore, right now,
He thought he was tameh.
because he thought it was tameh. In the minute you marked it, you were helping. 10 minutes from now, you're harming. Both for the reason we said in the Gemara earlier, that you're wasting Eretz Israel. Secondly, because of this,
Remove the marking?
that would help. But if the guy's gonna be able to do it, Amar Papa says that's what it's talking about. Mutav, Yisrafu alav later on, right? Alav tirumah v'kodashim lefi sha'ah. Says the Gemara, Mutav Yisrafu alav tirumah v'kodashim lefi sha'ah, v'yisrafu alav leolam. How would that help?
Isn't that what you just said? About the Kedoshim?
But as while it's tameh. It says, right? It's a very hard thing to figure out this. For them, for the people that are doing it.
I'm not understanding the sof michser chaser. Mutav yisrafu alav tirumah kodashim lefi sha'ah. Oh, sorry, mechila. And that's the Gemara saying. So the Gemara is now saying, okay, so you're telling me that there's no marker. If there's no marker, then
Can't do it then at that
no, then the kodashim from now
point. It becomes tameh.
needs to be burned.
Right.
The Gemara says that's true, but tiruma from now is very short. So I'd rather you burn the tiruma and kodashim when you find out that it was tameh now, which is only 10 minutes, however long, then you by mistake burn it forever. You can't compare the amounts, right? So therefore, the halacha says the Mishnah, you would only mark for more than a kazait. As we said, kazait's enough. The Gemara answered, the case over here where we said that you're not marking is for an exact kazait. Why? To teach you that even though it's going to be now, it's going to be mitameh be'ohel, but since in the fullness of time, it's not going to be full, in the fullness of time, you're going to wind up causing more damage than help. Says the Gemara, Eluhen hasefekot. We now go over back to the Mishnah, to the Braita. The Braita says, Eluhen hasefekot. What are these cases of doubt or of question that you need to mark in order to make clear? Sechachot uferaot. We mentioned sechachot, we mentioned feraot, which means branches that are hanging over it. Peraot, something which is sticking out over it like a balcony. And betapras, where the field is destroyed. Sechachot ilan ha-mesach al haaretz. What does that mean, sechachot? It means the branches of trees that are covering over, that are shielding it from on top, over the earth. Perot, what does it mean that something's sticking out? Avanim perot yotzot min hagader. It's talking about when you have bricks or stones or protrusions or anything that's built out of a wall, which is an overhang, which now I'm underneath. Says the Gemara, betapras. So what's betapras? Kedetnan, we learned in the Mishnah. Hachoresh et hakever, harehu oseh betapras. Someone who plows over a field that once was a burial site. What did he do? He created something called oseh betapras. The kama oseh, how much when he does this action of plowing over the field, how much does he make it? Milo ma'ana mea ama. Says the Gemara, a person at that point has a milo ma'ana, which means the length of the pulling of the plow, of the furrow. Mea ama, 100 amot. Now let's take a look at Rashi. Rashi says
it's 100 amot from the grave is where the field starts.
No, it's the. We'll see in a minute. Let's look at Rashi. Rashi says, where is it here? Betapras. Chatzi ma'ana telem echad shel mea ama. What does that mean? One second, we got the bet here. The gimel. The gimel.
Where are you looking, Ashi?
In the text.
It says here.
The Gemara is on page 6. On page Vav Amud Aleph.
Hey, no.
Yeah. So when you're plowing over sorry? You see the little gimel?
Mm-hmm.
There's a little gimel there by Chatzi Ma'ana and Rashi. That takes you to the Mesoret HaShas. Okay? Up here, Mesoret HaShas. By the way, I quoted him in the class this week. Remember I mentioned the class? The two rabbis? The two rabbis each had a special power. One of them was always able to understand everybody and how they worked and what makes them tick. And the other rabbi who everything he prayed for was answered. You forgot that one? Oh, it was this past Shabbat. The two rabbis, one of them was Mesoret HaShas. That's this one over here. Okay? He was the one whose all of his prayers were always answered. And he told him, I'll give you my secret if you give me yours. Genius. All right. So, what does Milah Ma'ana Me'ama means? You remember that now? Okay.
That was good.
When he says Ritzon Yerav Yaseh, it doesn't say in the book. So frustrated. No, I'm sure he told him, but they didn't tell us. Okay, so Milah Ma'ana means, let's say you have a graveyard over here. Yeah. Now I pull the plow. How far would we assume that the bones that were in the grave that you just plowed over were dragged? 100 amah, but the width of the furrow. We're not going to say that 100 amah, 6 feet wide. We're not going to say that. Why? Because the plow only pulled in the furrow. Okay? So the length of the furrow up to 100 amah, which is, by the way, an extraordinary amount. How much is 100 amah? Machloke. Halan
150 feet, 200 feet.
Between, you just nailed it.
Right?
Machloket, 150 feet
200.
or 200 feet. Why? What's the size of an amah?
About.
From here to here. So it's not exactly a unidimensional, formatted number.
Digit is a foot.
So Chachamim were, right? The Chachamim tried to figure out exactly how long, how big this shiur was. So the shiurim, there's two shiurim for amah. One is a foot and a half, one is 2 feet. All right? So let's follow that opinion, which means me'ah amah means either 150 feet or 200 feet. Now, you think, I ran over with my plow one grave. You're telling me I dragged bones 200 feet? You know how long 200 feet is? That's,
Not even in cemetery.
So I think, between you and me, I think the reason why we estimated or we guesstimated how long to make it tameh is, so you don't stop plowing over.
Right. Cover the
So you don't stop
extra.
because now
Give it extra.
look how much more of your land you just murphed.
Give it extra coverage to be safe.
So one element is extra, but it's way too much for extra. You ever, I don't know if you've ever done this. You ever pull a shovel, anything to the earth? So what happens is as you displace the earth that you're displacing goes to the side. Yeah, but it doesn't, you're not dragging earth from there to 100
Right
feet,
there, it's within the proximity.
5 feet, 10 feet, 200 feet. I think the reason why they did this was, so it's like we make sure that no one will ever plow over a cemetery or even a gravesite because the ramifications will wind up being much worse.
That don't even go near that idea.
Yes. Okay. Milo ma'ana me'ama. Okay. So says the Gemara. So a bet pras needs to be marked because it's a situation of doubt. I don't know did you hear anything?
So far, no. Today, no.
Okay. So let me give you the 20-second catch-up. The 20-second catch-up is as follows. When you mark graves, you're only marking for something which is tameh from ohel, which means of a roof. A roof could be a ceiling, it could be a tree hanging over, it could be a porch,
Could be you.
right? Or it could be if I'm standing over the met, so I'm the roof. Or if the roof is over me, so it's the roof over me, Yani. So any one of these cases, anytime it's roof, that's oil. But there's specific things that are tameh with oil. A certain amount of bone, a certain amount of flesh from a corpse.
What becomes tameh?
The person that's in the oil with the dead body.
Oh,
It's all
you're
about
covered
it's
in
all
it.
about
Yeah.
the demarcation.
I understand.
What you need to mark.
I understand.
Okay, so
Identify.
anything which is not tameh with oil, how do you become tameh? Touch it, or you move it. If the thing is buried,
Just being in the vicinity, depending on the markings, would
Yeah.
make you tameh.
and the markings are
oil.
only for something that's oil. If it's something which is tameh but not oil, then if it's buried, I have no access to it. Even if I jump up and down, I do jumping jacks on it, no problem. Okay, so therefore the Mishnah said, the Braita said, these are the things, and then it told us only on things which are in doubt you have to mark. No, you don't have to mark a graveyard as being tameh. It's obvious, it's a graveyard, right? So no one's going to go in there. Okay, so any scenario where it's obvious that that's the case. So the Gemara said, okay, well, what's the not obvious cases? Says the Braita, Elu ena sefekot. So sechachot, we mentioned branches that are growing. You might not notice are very high. You might not notice a porch coming out, very high, right? Or says the Gemara now, betapras, where a field, a graveyard was plowed over. Nobody knows it's a graveyard anymore.
Beta Pras is a graveyard?
Is a graveyard that was plowed over.
Okay.
Okay. Says the Gemara,
As little as Kazan.
What's his little design?
It could be as
of the
little
corpse,
as
as little as a kazait is already enough to be mitameh be'ohel.
man.
Okay, that's how much. So as an example, you have a bomb and a piece of a guy, bar minan, gets blown into some building. The whole building is now tumat oil.
Wow. Only if the person dies, right? In that case?
For sure, only if he dies. But we're talking about when the guy's being blown to
Otherwise,
bits.
he gets a Band-Aid.
No, he's asking.
What if it was a finger?
He's asking, what if a
the
guy
guy's
doesn't lose
finger
fingers?
over
Right,
there.
not tummy then. Only if he's
Then
dead.
it's just the body part.
It's a piece of a met.
Would you have to know?
Sorry?
You have to know, obviously.
Well, you're not really, because it either is tameh or it isn't tameh.
How do you know?
I might be an honest that I became tameh because I didn't know,
Okay.
but you're still tameh. It's a fact. It's like a spiritual fact, right? It's not dependent on my knowledge. Okay. Says the Gemara, ubeta pras, when it comes to beta pras, mi mitameh be'oil. You told me in the Braita that the only thing you're going to give me warning for is an ohel, right? Why? Because if it's buried, it's covered. Yeah? So why beta pras does it need a warning if beta pras is not mitameh be'oil? V'amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, menapeach adam beta pras. If a person blows on the ground of the beta pras, he's allowed to walk through it. What does that mean? He's allowed to walk through it. What is he doing when he's blowing?
Nothing's moving.
Says the Gemara, menapeach adam, haholech l'shchot pischo. Person who's going. Look at Rashi. You see Rashi in the 4 lines above the wide lines. A person's going to do the Korban Pesach. Because if there's a small, tiny amount of bone that you might not have noticed, okay, or it's that tiny that's going to make a problem. If you go, that was very funny. There was something on the thing and it blew away, which is exactly the point of Rashi. That if there's something that fine, that small, when you blow, it's going to go away. Okay? So, the idea is that a person's able to, if he's in a beta pras, he could go like this, and then he's good. Yes, Rashi says, I don't understand. If tumat oil is not an issue, if tumat oil, is an issue, yeah, of oil, let's say you blew it over there. Now what? Still under the same roof.
I'm not following what the blowing does.
It moves it from in front of not a finger.
Oh.
We're talking about a finger you'd see. We're talking about something so we mentioned kesora, the size of a barley.
A speck.
A bone the size of a barley. So small. You're not going to notice it. So the Gemara says, if you're going to beta pras, you're worried that something got dragged up, a little tiny fragment. Okay, so go, and then it blows it away.
You can't cover the whole land.
That's exactly the Gemara's proof. If the Isur is only from touching it, it helps that you blew it away. If you're under a roof and you blew it, so now it's over there, you're still under the roof. Yeah. So the Gemara's proving from the fact that you could blow it must be that Rabbi Yehuda Amarav Shmuel held that beta pras is not mitameh be'oil. In which case, why did you just tell me that you have to put a marking for beta pras if we told you earlier that the only thing that you have to worry about is something which is tameh in an oil? I think, by the way, there's an obvious answer to this question.
Can you ask the question one more time?
The Gemara's question is, you just told me that you have to mark a beta pras. Why? Because it's an area of doubt. I don't know it's a graveyard. And there's not there's nothing covering, there's no schach, there's no out protrusions from the wall covering, right? But beta pras you have to mark. So Gemara says, what, beta pras, you're telling me? When you have a plowed up graveyard, it's tameh be'oil? Don't we have a teaching that tells us that if you're in a beta pras and you're trying to go do your Korban Pesach, all you have to do is blow the ground and you're able to go as you blow. Blow as you go. Why? Because anything that's there, you're going to move it. That only helps if it is not tameh be'oil. Right. We're talking about. It's not under oil. Not if it's under oil. If it is not, by its own definition, something which is tameh oil. Beta pras cannot be something which transfers tumah be'oil. You know why? Because if it did, then what would it help to blow?
Nothing.
Wouldn't help. So obviously, if I tell you that it helps to blow, it means that you hold beta pras does not make tumah be'oil. Okay. Just like we said, a dead sheretz doesn't tumah be'oil, only by touching it. So beta pras must be the same thing, and that's why it helps to blow. There's an obvious answer to this question.
I'm not following what the question is.
The question is, the Gemara brought a proof. I have a question on the proof, and I think everyone here should really pick up on the proof. Should pick up on the question on the proof.
So the proof is that we just learned that the beta pras shouldn't be tameh be'ohel, right?
Because you could blow it out of the way.
Because you could blow it out of the way.
Otherwise, then the whole thing.
So how are you telling me over here that you have to put a marking, right?
Which means it would be.
Which means it is tameh be'ohel. If you see over there that it's not tameh be'ohel, okay? Because if it was tameh be'ohel, it wouldn't help to blow it.
That's bothering me. I'm not getting it.
And the 100 amot doesn't qualify. It's too big.
Sorry?
Then that area, the pras is too big. 100 amot. It doesn't. It's not. You're not tameh.
The question isn't if you're tameh or not. The question is, we have a braita that says that you got to mark beta pras, and that same braita says the only thing you have to mark is something which is tameh and oil, which tells you that the braita holds beta pras. It transmits tum'ah even through an oil. Now we have another teaching that tells us that you could blow, which tells you that it does not. It does not. No, not you didn't have an oil. That it doesn't transmit through an oil. Because if it did, then it wouldn't help to blow it. Okay.
Does it put fences around a Beit HaPras, a cemetery that we're extra careful now? You
So,
can't travel through, you can't get.
If you're changing and answering the question, that's not what I'm asking.
I got it.
I'm suggesting that there's something here that maybe would seem to be obvious in the scenario. Okay, let's come to it. Amar.
Not obvious enough to us.
Rav Yehuda bar Ami Mishmei Ula. Rav Yehuda bar Ami, in the name of Ula, says, Beta pras shenidash tahor. Sorry, so in the same braita, we have in the same teaching of Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel like this: Rav Yehuda bar Ami Mishmei Ula Amar. Yehuda bar Ami said in the name of Ula, Beta pras shenidash tahor. Okay? Beta pras that was trampled on, yani many people walk through. Let's say you have a beta pras that a lot of people walk through like a shoka. Okay? So it's already tahor. Right? That's the halacha. Now, why do we hold that it's tahor if people trampled on it?
Because if something's there, then it's probably buried so far beneath at that point.
Or it's gone.
Or it's broken.
Or it's broken.
It's broken into pieces that are too small to be a problem. Okay?
Does the under the ground qualify as tameh or no?
Under the ground qualifies as tameh if it's more than a shiur.
Like, let's say it's an arm,
Yes.
a dead arm, and it's under the ground.
So under the
How would you ever know?
so that's why they're marking.
You need to mark. We're talking about things that are too small.
Yeah.
Oh, this is only in the case of too
A
small.
lot of it's logical. Like you mark because you can't figure it out.
So what's Ula adding to this? The first opinion said you could blow. The other opinion says, 1 second, if everyone's walked through here a million times, everyone's trampled all over the stuff over here now even blowing is unnecessary.
But ohel doesn't count anymore then at that point.
So what are we proving from here? It must be that the Gemara over here held, right, that there's no tumah by a roof. Right. Why? Because if there was, the blowing wouldn't help. The trampling wouldn't help. Okay? Says the Gemara, Amar of Papa, no, lo kasha, no question. Kan bisde sha'avad bakever. When are we talking about when you need a marker? We're talking about where we have a field, and in this field, there used to be a grave, but we don't know where the grave is. In that case, you need to have a marker. Kan bisadeh shenechrash bakever. The second case of beta pras is where you literally plowed over the kever. We knew where it was, but it was plowed over. Okay, in the case it was plowed over, that's the case that we were talking about, where you could blow something out of the way, because we're dealing with things that are very small. Or if it was trampled on, no problem. But in the case where there's a whole grave here, we just don't know where it is. In that case, you'd have to mark the field, and also in that case, you would be tameh be'ohel. So we have one braita that tells you beta pras is tameh be'ohel. What case is that? That's where there's a whole body there. We just lost where the grave is. Yani, what was plowed over was not that the earth was turned over. No, the tombstone was plowed over, Yani. The grave, we don't know where. So there's somewhere in this field is a dead body.
That's why I was asking the question. If it's underground, does it automatically make it tameh?
Automatically, if you're standing over it, because you're a roof.
Right.
Right?
Because you're a roof.
But only if there's enough enough underneath to qualify for the things that we said you need for tumat oil. Gemara says, "V'sadeh she'avad ba'kever bet hapras kaele." We translated bet hapras as a trampled field, as a plowed field. Now you're telling me it's a lost grave field?
So you're in a field and you really don't know if there's a grave in the field.
Yeah.
Plowed.
No.
Could be a real body in the field.
No. So when they plowed and they plowed over it and you've spread the dead body, Yani, that's bet hapras. The Gemara says, would you also call a case where there's just a whole dead body somewhere, we're just not sure where it is? You would also call it, that's just a regular field.
Became a mess.
By the way, it happens in war all the time. They
War,
bury
right.
people.
Yes, we were talking about that. Yes. So bet hapras, what would bet hapras be?
Wars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the Gemara says, yes, actually, bet hapras means both terminologies. Where do we find that?
Yeah.
In Vatanan, we saw in the Mishnah, Shlosha bet hapras hen. There's 3 different kinds of fields that are called bet hapras. Sadeh sheneh evad bakever, a cave, a situation where you had a field where the grave, where it was, we have no idea where it is. V'sadeh sheneh cherash bakever, and a field where there was a graveyard and they plowed through and now it's dragged all over the place. V'sadeh bochin, and a crying field. Ask the Gemara, crying field? Shuada. My sde bochin. Gemara says, Rav Yeshua bar Abba Mishmei de Ula Amar, he said, sadeh shemaftirim ba metim. That's the place, maftir, in the Torah. What is maftir?
It's for the one who has to say Kaddish.
So haftara, maftir, that's the last one. Okay? And maftirin, come on, who knows this?
No.
Excellent! Achara Pesach, Afikoman. What does that mean? That after the Afikoman, you're not allowed to have anything else to eat. You have to leave the taste of the Afikoman in your mouth. So let's say you have that last matzah at the end of the Seder. You can't now have brownies. Now you have to taste the matzah in your mouth. So what is the language over there? En maftirin. Maftir means something that after something is finished. Okay? So like you taking leave. So what's this field of the criers? Stebuchin, the crying field. That's the place where they cry, where they leave, they say goodbye to the ones that passed away. Yani, a field adjacent to the place. Gemara says, V'tay mamai. So why in the world?
Why can't you go there?
Sorry?
Why can't we go there? They're not burying there.
Exactly. What would be the isur of the field just because people say goodbye from that place? Rashi says, the Gemara says, Amar Avimi, Mishum Yush Be'alim Naga Uba. Look at Rashi, third wide line. Mishum Yush Be'alim, because of the giving up, because of the loss of hope of the owners. Lefi sheheviyu mimakom rachok, nidaldel ever v'nafal sham, v'nityashu elu al elu v'nichu sham. The Gemara says, what we're worried about is since this area is adjacent to the burial grounds, we're worried about in the hubbub of the burial and the sadness,
Something gets diverted.
maybe something fell out of the. Remember, they didn't used to bury in a box. See, I can already see where you were going. You're like, come on.
Yeah.
They used to bury wrapped in a talit. Yeah.
Right.
So they're grabbing a body, they're walking, and everyone's screaming, they're crying. If someone was not in a whole state, it's highly likely that something fell somewhere. So the adjacent place to the Makom Tum'ah is also called Sadeh Piras. Yes, exactly. So we'll pick up from here.
It's funny how they were so close in space on things. The roof, and now we're already outside the area in another area.
Yeah, the area right outside. Yeah, but it's only Bet HaPras. It has the laws of Bet HaPras, not the laws of a Bet HaKvarot. We'll pick up from here.